I'm here with Robert, who does the historical tours of Greater Holyoke. This includes canals, churches, cemeteries, reservoirs, parks, and streets in Holyoke, Chicopee, and South Hadley, Mass. His website is holyokecanaltour.org, and his email address is bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. Again, that's BOBCAT4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And this podcast with the Ashley Reservoir walking tour. Now, how is the Ashley Reservoir tour different from the Wading Street tour?
Well, both reservoir tours are wonderful, but the major difference by far is that if you go around the Wading Street Reservoir, most of the points of interest are the entertainment centers that grew around it. So you had the mountain park, which became an amusement park. You had the tramway up to the top of Mount Tom, the beautiful mountain up there, which had many patrons go up there and go in a house there where they can view the Pioneer Valley. You had the golf course, which became the Wyckoff Golf Course. You have the many walkers going around, including walkers coming off the M&M Trail, the Monadnock Metacomic Trail. So it's a very entertainment-oriented center. And also you had the Mount Tom Alpine area. Now, if you look at Ashley, it didn't have the entertainment value, but it's the center of all water activity in Holyoke. All drinking water passes through, pretty much all passes through the Ashley system. And so you have many reservoirs that make up the system in the immediate area. You have some a small distance off it. You have some major ones in Southampton and West Hampton that flow into Ashley. Whereas with Wading Street Reservoir, it's only a small amount of reservoirs that feed into it that are tiny. And so Ashley's a vast reservoir system, and Wading Street mostly important, not only for its water, but for its entertainment value. So, some people actually prefer one over the other when they're walking around too.
Now, why are there so many reservoirs in the Ashley Reservoir system?
The reason why is because the Holyoke was an industrial city. It needed water not only for its people, but it needed for its industry. Industry had to have pure water to make, for instance, paper. You put sulfur into paper at one of its points, but if you leave that sulfur in there, it's going to make the paper become yellow and brittle with age. And so you have to get the water to clean out that sulfur. And it has to be pure water, of course. Now, you don't need the water for power because the Connecticut River and the canal causes water power to happen. But you need that pure water from the reservoirs to make that water very clean. And other industries around, like the silk industry, the wool industry, also needed waters. Another point that people don't get is the daytime population of Holyoke was much greater than its nighttime population. The population that they count is the nighttime population, where people live at night. And that might have been 65,000 people in Holyoke in the 1920s. But the daytime population included all the workers coming in to the city, all the patrons coming into the restaurants and stores. The daytime population of Holyoke might have been 100,000 people. And so that's a big city at that point, and you need lots of water. And it worked out.
Now, how is Ashley used nowadays?
Nowadays, it still is used as a water source. Its reservoir next to it, called McLean Reservoir, is used as a high pressure reservoir. Ashley is used only for about 10% of the water of Holyoke. And the reason why it's not more is because there's an enormous reservoir in Southampton called the Ty Carmody, made in 1956. It is so vast that you can add up all the water of all the reservoirs in Holyoke, and the Ty Carmody is 8 times larger in volume than the combined sum of all the other reservoirs around Holyoke. That's an incredible amount of water. And so most of the water coming into Holyoke from Ty Carmody is used. In fact, they account for 80% of all the water used. 10% comes from McLean and 10% comes from Ashley. Ashley can deliver more, and during emergency times, it is used as a backup to deliver more. So this great system has worked.
Now, which walk is better, Ashley or Whiting Street?
Okay, a lot of people ask me which I like and what they like, and most people say Ashley. They like Ashley better. And the reason they give me it, they say it's wide open, you have views around the whole of Ashley, and you get to see a small mountain, you get to see the beautiful trails and the greenery at all points. And around Whiting Street, you don't always get to see it. The reason why, well, one section in the front portion where the gatehouse is, yes, you have the beautiful view of Mount Tom, but around most of the other sections enclosed by trees, you don't get to see Mount Tom, you don't get to see too much greenery except what's in front of you. And strangely enough, it's divided by gender. Most men tell me they like Whiting Street better, and most women tell me they like Ashley better. And that's a very peculiar fact.
And tell us some interesting facts about Ashley.
Well, the most incredible fact, and most people don't appreciate it, is made up of 14 reservoirs. There are two main reservoirs, huge ones, but there are also causeways that separate two smaller ones, and then there's tiny ones all around it. And most of them have names. And so when you go on this Ashley tour, you'll get to learn all the names of each of them. The Connor Reservoir, the Cedar Reservoir, the Clare Reservoir. Who would have thought those were names of reservoirs around that area? And there's even one that doesn't exist anymore, the Tannery Reservoir, that's now gone. But all these facts people love, and they also like to learn about that it used to be 6 feet lower when it first started. They also like to learn that where the dams and spillways are. It's not very obvious actually where that is, whereas at Whiting Street it's very obvious. So thank you for listening to the podcast, and I hope you come on the Ashley tour, and also hope you compare it to the Whiting Street tour at some point.
Thank you, Robert. And again, he does the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, including the canals, churches, cemeteries, reservoirs, parks, and streets in Holyoke, Chicopee, and South Hadley, Mass. His website is holyokecanaltour.org, and his email address is bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. Again, that's BOBCAT4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. Thank you very much. I'm here with Robert, who's going to be answering a few questions on one of his tours. He does historical tours of Greater Holyoke. He does some tours on the canals, churches, cemeteries, reservoirs, parks, and streets in Holyoke, Chicopee, and South Hadley, Massachusetts. You can go to his website at holyokecanaltour.org, or if you are interested in any private tours, you can email him at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. Again, that's BOBCAT4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. So, Robert, you're going to be answering some questions on your Whiting Street Tour reservoir, right? So, why is the Whiting Street Tour reservoir your favorite tour to give?
It's my favorite one because I used to be a cross-country runner and track runner in high school, and this was where many of our practices were held, and all the home meets were held there at Whiting Street Reservoir. So I became very much attached to that area and used to run it. I probably ran it 1,000 times during high school. And I've probably either run it or biked it or walked it 1,000 times since then. So I've been around it 2,000 times. So it's a great place to go around. It's very beautiful. And I'm going to end up describing many of the stops as we go around. The stops will include the oldest dam there, which is still there but doesn't have the reservoir behind it. But then the very big dam is there, and so I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about, of course, the giant reservoir. But around it was many entertainment venues, and most people don't know that because many are gone. But there used to be an amusement park, there used to be a mountaintop observatory, and it's a great place to be around. Okay.
So, what are your favorite stops on this reservoir tour?
My favorite stops are the ones that point out a lot about the entertainment sections around, because people get to hike up trails and they're going to a place that used to be a place where thousands of visitors a day would be. such as there's a small trail that was actually a road into the mountain park. And Mountain Park wasn't first just a park. And then later, after about 30 years of use, it became more of an amusement park. It became a mountain park amusement park. But there used to be an access road towards its back that cars can get into it. And I like pointing out where the trolley went. And then on one side, I like pointing out where a tramway went up the top of the mountain. And then also point out where modern trails are, where old gateways used to be, where the golf course was. So a lot of the fun stuff is not pointing in towards a reservoir, but pointing outwards from the reservoir.
So are those some of the attractions that once were around the perimeter of the reservoir?
Some of the attractions around that perimeter include, and I'll list them out, the Mountain Park, which became Mountain Park Amusement Park. And that's now become an open area where for a couple of years they had musical venues, but that even changed. And then I also include an alpine ski area called the Mount Tom Ski. And then I also include the mountaintop, which was an observatory deck. There was 3 observatory decks because the first 2 burned down. But I point out people the trail to get up there. There's a couple different trails. And then there's a modern day Monadnock Trail that comes in towards the reservoir, but then very quickly after a quarter mile goes out from the reservoir. So I get to point that out to people. And then as you go along, there's a road called the Albert Steiger Road, and on top of that is a WPA gate at the top of it, which still exists. It's not on the main highway anymore because that moved. So it's a gateway that's off on a side road that used to be the highway, and people can walk up there on their own. And then also the golf course, which was an integral part of the reservoir, and there used to be a place on the reservoir you can go into the golf course from the back. And I show people where the modern roadway is, but I also show them where the old-time roadway is. And then the last part is show them the access road coming up from Route 5, and that's pretty much disappeared, but I show them where it used to be and why it was so drastically important and what was along the way and what happened to it. Well, what happened to it is the Interstate 91 came away and the access road wasn't really needed anymore.
And now, what about a trail map?
I want to invent a trail map. I've gotten a hold of a map of all the outdoor trails in Holyoke already, but I want to make my own, which integrates the ones on Mount Tom in with the ones around the reservoirs, especially Wayne Street Reservoir, but also Ashley Reservoir and its mountain. And I want to integrate even those into urban trails around Holyoke. So I have a big urban trail map. And someday I want to do that. So I got a hold of a map that shows the ones there now, and I want to include these trails around the reservoir. Because it makes it look like right now it's only Mount Tom has a trail, but that's not true. There's a lot of trails around reservoirs and urban sites in Holyoke.
Now, what research do you still have to do on this vast area?
Okay, I keep improving. In fact, this year I just found out that I was pointing out the old dam has been in the wrong place. The one I was pointing out was probably some kind of protective dam, but that old one was called the Intake Reservoir Dam, and I found out it's still there. And by looking at old maps and talking to people, by looking at old databases and resources, I can figure out new things. One thing I want to prove is exactly where the roads came. How did the trolley road different from the 2 entrance road by cars, which different from the very ancient road into the reservoir, which was different from the old road that went into Mountain Park amusement park area. They were all almost side by side. There's 5 roads going different places, and I want to show exactly where they were. I know about 75% of it, but I keep wanting to prove my theories about the whole area. And I also want to find out one incredible thing was Albert Steiger, a retailer in Holyoke, developed his own trail from the back of his house on Mountain View Drive to the reservoir. And I found the old part of this trail a couple of years ago, by accident. I didn't know it was there, even though I went around that reservoir 2,000 times. I didn't know it was there. But there was a storm, a rainstorm 2 years ago, that washed out the trail that was invisible, and they washed it out in such a way that it became visible, and it put a lot of debris down on the reservoir road, and I could finally see it. And I discovered this is probably his trail that he made. I know he was an avid hiker, an avid golfer, and he used to golf on that golf course, the Wyckoff golf course, and he would go in the trail behind it and walk around the reservoir. So I want to prove that this trail is the one that matches the description.
Now, discuss the reservoir area's future.
Well, sadly, it's not a functional reservoir as of 1989, and it's become only a backup. And there is a group now that just filed a report this year, and their report includes that they want to make it into a conservation land. So it's going to be a functional dam and reservoir as a backup to Holyoke, but the whole land around it will be a conservation land for Holyoke. And Holyoke doesn't have many, under that term, conservation land. So that would be a great way, because it will preserve the land so it cannot be developed, and the whole western extent of Holyoke would be one nature. And that's incredible for a city to have half of the city be nature land. And I hope it continues in that way. But someday that dam might fail, and it's only 200 yards from an interstate highway. And so the state might tell them, take down the dam. So when that happens, do they have the money to build a new dam? Well, not right now, and they're expensive. So who knows what the real future will be. But I hope the Holyoke Water Works continues to make it look a very beautiful place.
Okay. And thank you, Robert, for telling us a little bit about that. Again, he does the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, which include canals, churches, cemeteries, reservoirs, parks, and streets in Holyoke, Chicopee, and South Hadley, Mass. And again, you can find out more on his website, holyokecanaltour.org, or email him at bobcat4214, capital B, .yahoo.com. Thank you very much.